Hey everybody, here's the long anticipated part 2 review for the Poulan Pro PP5020AV. Well, at least it's long anticipated for me anyway. Alright, well I've had this saw for a long time. I'm going to say at least 6 years. To full disclosure, I've not put a ton of hours on it. It's been a backup, and now it's a backup to a backup. But I did recently kind of get it back out and dust it off and do a little more research on it and did some upgrades to it. So I thought you might want to hear a long-term review of this saw. So I'd like to start with the cons first. Right off the bat, obvious is this is a heavy bugger. I've seen specs online that say anywhere from 10 to 13 pounds, whatever the heck that's worth. I've not put a scale on it, but all I know is when I grab it, it's like, oh, golly, and maybe there's just some grip geometry involved with that, but it feels stinking heavy, and I'm just gonna guess it's 13 plus pounds. Definitely was not made to be like a commercial lightweight saw that you're throwing around for hours and hours every day. I think it was meant to be more of a budget saw targeted at homeowners, or maybe like a backup or occasional use for contractor professional type work. That's my guess. It has a really heavy, I don't know if this is just pot metal or aluminum. I don't think it's aluminum. It's a lot denser, seems a lot denser than aluminum. I'm gonna guess it's just cheap pot metal chain case cover here. And I think the reason why they went with the heavy one probably was because of price, but number two, it's actually got the chain brake and clutch and everything appears to be integrated into the cover. So that's my brief basic understanding of that. It's got a fairly cheesy chain brake on it, I have to say. I feel like if you were using this under heavy use, that it probably would break. It's definitely, I don't know if you can see, it's just super cheesy. Appears to work and get the job done, but don't really know what that's all about. Definitely came with a cheap bar and a cheap chain. I don't know what else to say about that. It's actually inside of here. It was a black bar. It was actually produced by Oregon. It's got some Oregon nomenclature on it. It definitely was more of a homeowner chain, very much a safety chain, light duty, with, from what I could tell, smaller chisels. And if you've seen the previous video, I had problems with that chain just because of inconsistencies on the grind pattern, the grind size on each of the chisels. And so therefore it took a lot of time and work to even get the correct size file to pop in there. And I know there was some comments about, oh, you must not be using the right file size. No, it was the right file size. It's just every now and then, you know, maybe every other tooth, it would fit in there and do the job. And the next one, you'd have to sit there and work on it just to get it to fit in. So it needed work just to be able to sharpen it. And number two, you still just had a fairly cheesy chain. Yeah, don't know what else to say about that. So this obviously is not the original bar and chain. This is a upgraded bar and chain, which I'll just go over real quick, just in case you are interested in that. The correct bar is a Oregon 200 RNDK095. It's a 20-inch bar. I think it also will fit like a Husqvarna 450, from what I understand. A real brief rabbit trail. I saw some reviews online that guys were saying that the oiling orifices did not match up correctly with their Poulan Pro. I did not have that issue whatsoever. This one matches up just fine, and in fact they are smaller size orifices than the original bar that came on this saw, which I think is a good thing, because this saw just blows through bar oil like you wouldn't believe. It's just a heavy oiling beast, and so I'm happy that there's smaller orifice size on this, because I think it'll make bar oil last longer. And it matched right up, no problems with that for me. The corresponding correct chain, obviously an Oregon 72LGX072G is the correct chain, and a huge upgrade from the factory chain. This chain is very reminiscent of a factory chain that came on my Stihl MS290, and wouldn't be surprised if it's not very similar specs. There's that. I have actually not run this yet, but obviously it's going to be a far superior chain, do a superior job, and it did have good reviews online. Moving right along, you know, a con that I would see for this saw is that the price. So this all depends on what you want it for and what you get, what you paid for it. I don't even think you can find these anymore, probably used. There may be a surplus of used ones out there sitting in people's garages and whatnot, but originally I think this at Costco was $225 or $249, somewhere in there. I've seen them anywhere priced from low 200s up to $300, just under 300 bucks. So, you know, I feel like for what you get, and if you're having to upgrade, and between the bar and the chain on this, they're not cheap, especially with today's prices. You know, this is probably anywhere from a $50 to a $90 upgrade on here, unless you're okay with the original setup and you, at least in my case, did some work to it to make it work. So to me, that's a con. And so moving on to the pros, it does have gobs of power. This, you know, I don't know much about this motor. I'm told it's got interchangeable Husqvarna parts. I think I saw a video where somebody actually took the muffler off and it was stamped Husqvarna. And I think there may be some interchangeable Husqvarna parts on this. But it is an absolute beast on the power. I read one guy's review. It was a professional arborist, and he had this as a backup saw. He upgraded to a 24-inch bar, and he said it did not even skip a beat, and had just plenty of power to turn that big bar and chain with no issues. And he had it as a budget backup saw when he's out in the woods. So there's that. It does come with a carry case. You know, this is actually a Husqvarna carry case, from what I understand. Because you can buy these brand new right now, and they say Husqvarna and they're orange. They're anywhere from, I don't know, probably an average of 50 bucks is what I've seen. I don't really see a Husqvarna part number on this offhand. But anyway, at any rate, moving on. I mean, that's obviously a plus. I do actually like this integrated wrench here that clips into the handle here. I thought that was kind of interesting. Don't have a lot of use with that, but if you don't want to have the carrying case all the way out there, that's kind of interesting. Oh, and I'm sorry, back to one more con. We talked about the oiling on this thing. This thing is a leaker, man. Like, if you let it sit for any amount of time, it is just going to pool the oil. And I know all saws are leakers, but like, I'm serious, this one freaking like done. And if you have a tank of bar oil in it, it is going to puke it out in short order wherever you have the saw sitting. So just be aware of that. So who is this saw for? I think that's an important question to ask. Obviously, I still have this. I did, and I'm sure people weren't happy about this, but I did return my original saw to Costco. We had a small family. We did not have a lot of money at that time, and I could not afford to buy a saw at full price and then have to put money into it for a new bar and chain. And so I took it back to Costco, and I asked them at the counter, like, hey, this is where I'm at. You know, this chain needs some work in order to even be able to file it correctly. What are your thoughts? And they said that's totally legitimate, and so they took the saw back. So the reason why I have this saw is because I went to a local retail store that used to sell Costco return items. And guys, they had a pile of these saws in there. And I don't know if most of that was just buyer's remorse or if people actually had issues with them. But they had those saws for a little over 100 bucks. So at that point, I had returned my original one. I had saved up my pennies and bought a MS290 still for my business. Which, by the way, has been an incredible saw. Never had an issue. Maybe I'll do a review on one of those later. When I saw this for $100 at a retail store, when I was darn near still new in the box, I thought, well, shoot, I would like to have a backup saw for the business, and at that point, how can I go wrong if it'll even run? So that's why I have this. So I think that this saw, in terms of who it's for, assuming that people are still interested in them, finding them used, if there's a used market for them or whatever, I think it's a good budget homeowner saw if you have big trees you're going to be taking down, okay? And I'm thinking more of like full price at this point. And so, you know, if you need an actual 20-inch bar and a saw that'll sling it, and I think it's, and you're really on a tight budget, I think that it's a good saw. If you're not on a tight budget, just go buy yourself an MS271. Obviously, I'm a Stihl guy. MS271 or an MS290, and I think it'll be a better saw in the long run. Maybe, I don't know. That's just my opinion. You know, or if you need if you're a contractor and you're really on a tight budget, you need a backup saw. It's my understanding that this is a good fit for that scenario. if you can find these slightly used, like at garage sales and whatnot, and get a good deal on them, man, like I think it's a great saw. Again, assuming you need a heavy, big, powerful saw. If you're just, you know, looking for something in that same price range, you know, 180 to 250 bucks, and you don't need a big saw, man, this is not the saw for you. Like, I cannot say enough about the MS-170 saw. It's a 16-inch bar. I think you can even upgrade to an 18-inch bar. I've got a little bit of time on that saw, and I own one. And gosh, if you don't need to cut anything bigger than a 16-inch tree, and even then, you know, obviously you can do things to cut a bigger tree with it. Like, that is a ton of saw for a homeowner, even for a business for occasional use. And you can get a brand new warranty. It's got a good track record, etc., etc. And Husqvarna and Echo, and I mean, everybody's got comparable saws to that. So yeah, I think there are alternatives to this saw if you don't need a big heavy saw, unless you just get it dirt cheap. So anyways, that's my opinion. You may have different experiences, and that's totally okay. I did obviously go ahead and buy this setup. I think between the chain and the bar, I think I ended up spending about 80 bucks on it or so. But again, so now I've got $180 into this saw roughly, and it's a good solid backup. This one's ready to fire up and go. One other little con is that this is a 40-to-1 saw. Everything I run that's two-stroke is all 50-to-1, so that's kind of a pain in the butt, not the end of the world. But it is something you got to work around. You know, I am a big fan of the premix fuel here. It is expensive, but I've spent a lot of downtime and a lot of money on two-strokes in the past, having carburetor issues, and it just seems like no matter how hard you work on it, the susceptibility for, you know, a laborer to accidentally mix the fuel incorrectly or get some water in it or some snow or whatever, it's always been a pain in the butt. And I really like this stuff, and it rules out that issue. So yeah, all right, well, appreciate you watching this. Hopefully that was informative for anybody who's looking at a used PP5020AV Poulan Pro. And yeah, have a good day.